All right, everyone, we have a special guest here, Solomon Choi, founder and CEO of 16 Handles. So I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us today.
Thanks for having me.
And you guys have an amazing concept. So tell me a little bit about your concept, and then it'd be interesting to hear how you guys got started and why restaurants. Like what gravitated you to do it to yourself and be involved in restaurants.
Sure. So my background, I kind of grew up in the restaurant industry. My father was a restaurateur since I was in school. I got a chance to, even when I was attending university, work on the weekends as a server, make some extra tips.
Yeah.
And then 3 years after I graduated from undergrad, he had asked me to come help him with one of his locations down in San Diego. I grew up in Southern California.
Nice.
And my father was a multi-unit franchisee, so I understood kind of what it was like to be a franchisee of a larger organization, following systems, and then running front and back of the house in terms of operations. And so I got to see the entire thing.
Yeah.
I moved down to San Diego for about 18 months. It was a turnaround situation, a restaurant he had owned for 7 years.
Wow.
Was able to successfully do that. We sold it, and he said, you really have a knack for this. Really within the aspects of hospitality, my background by nature is marketing. I was a marketing major for undergrad. That's what I studied.
Okay.
I would have gone the traditional advertising and branding route had I not gone into hospitality.
Yeah.
And so I think that was a good industry to get into, because when I think about the guest experience and what sets you apart, to be able to brand, right? And so branding and consumer behavior were my two favorite courses in college. One of few that I can even remember going to class for. But specifically what it came down to was, how do you create that positive emotional connection with a customer who then says what you're selling me or offering me is worth a certain value, right? And we can replicate a dish, we can replicate a concept, but it's really difficult to replicate that personal, positive emotional connection.
Yeah.
And so in doing that, even for my father's restaurant, really turning the service piece around, and then some menu innovations, the combination of the two is really what spiked sales and then allowed us to establish ourselves as kind of the leading Japanese restaurant in San Diego at the time. We were winning all the awards. My father's like, we're not the best sushi and Japanese restaurant. I said, hey, the Union Tribune Readers Poll says it is, and I couldn't influence that. Like, you can't pay for those.
Yeah.
And so that's when he was like, you're really good at being able to do that, like create a service environment. Because I don't have a culinary background, and although I think I'm a pretty good weekend warrior when it comes to cooking, can hold my own in the kitchen, but it was really through, again, changing what happens in these four walls and creating a moment that people want to come back for.
What are one of those things from a branding perspective that you would tell another restaurateur out there? Like, what is the one or two things that they should do with regards to brand that can help them set themselves apart?
Sure. So for one, it's what does the brand stand for? Because that oftentimes is then followed up like, why should I care about your brand?
Yeah.
Right. And I think you have to have a solid position on that. So it's not to say like, here's what you guys should do. It's what do you want to be known for?
Yeah.
Right. And if you say, well, we want to be known for having the best sandwiches, that's that's kind of a what, but that's not the why. Like, why should I care is not because you have a great sandwich, but it's because you consistently give me this sandwich and I know that you're going to get it to me. And like, there's got to be an expectation of what is this brand going to do for me?
Yeah.
And yes, they better have good sandwiches. That's a given, but I think oftentimes a lot of restaurateurs who are a lot of times operations focused, which is great, they miss the marketing piece and they try to just get by without it or hire somebody or outsource it. And I think that the marketing and the branding has to be owned internally, meaning you can certainly outsource creative services and help with campaigns, but the brand message and what the brand stands for, like, to me, the founder, the CEO, the restaurateur, he or she needs to establish that before you open the doors. And if you are opening your doors and you have it, take a step back, because the operation is going to run, right? And then really figure that out, and then figure out how to then implement that on a day-to-day. Look, it's all the touch points of front of house staff. It's how you do your email marketing, your social media marketing. It's your voice. And to me, you have to have a voice. So for instance, at 16 Handles, I moved out from LA to New York City to start it in 2008. Not exactly the best time to go and start a business, but for me, it was the perfect time to go and start a business. I had a lot of overqualified labor. Unemployment was at a high. We were going through a financial crisis. So I also had a lot less competition in terms of people looking to open up stores like this.
Right.
And for me, the positioning that we had was I was going to be the first to offer the self-serve format, pay-by-weight format in New York City, something that I learned in Southern California. I was going to have eco-friendly packaging, right? And with that eco-friendly packaging, have a partnered nonprofit that we support. So in our case, it's a company called Trees for the Future, based out of Maryland. Essentially, this company will help third world countries and farmers there really be able to harvest and cultivate their lands for multi-generation, because a lot of them, because of the lack of farming skills, will kill off their land and they can't reuse that. Like once the soil's dead, it's dead. And so, this leads to then, planting of fruit trees for women to then have their businesses.
Oh, wow.
Things like that. Like to me, it comes full circle. And why that's important is my brand is a brand that our target demographic is the millennial female, 18 to 34-year-old female. And so when we look at even the types of programs that our nonprofit supports, it needs to go full circle. Like if I do that and I pick something random just because I like it, that'll be important to me, but it probably won't resonate with the customer.
Yeah.
Also from a brand voice perspective, again, when it comes to branding, if you go into our stores and if you see us online, like both the visuals as in terms of the sensory visuals of the store, the type of music we're playing, the flavor profiles that we're choosing, as well as then how our brand looks and feels online, both in terms of text as well as visual, is very much, you would think that it's being done by a millennial female. Like that's probably the person behind the screen. And it is. As a matter of fact, my head of digital and social is a millennial female herself, and I thought that was very important. I've gone through and hired people and worked with agencies, over the last 12 years since I started this company. But that's what I found was the most authentic and created the most engaging content was when it came from someone that was that individual, that was her. Yeah. And so that way 60 Handles now feels more like a friend than it does this company that I go to that just sells me ice cream or frozen yogurt. And I think therein lies the difference. There's a lot of tactics in terms of how do you overlay those so that way it becomes, again, something more tangible. Yeah. So it's not just one thing, one or two things, it's all things. Yeah. But I think it's really important to have that lens of like, what does your brand stand for? And so for us, the sustainability piece is something that was important for me. Always growing up 20 minutes from a beach in Southern California, and then seeing even some of the legislation change where, I remember right before I moved out from New York, all the beach cities in California banned styrofoam packaging, right? And so in seeing things like this, I thought, you know what, I want that as part of the brand DNA. And quite frankly, when I moved to New York, it was like New Yorkers didn't really care about that today, but I knew that they would, right? And again, and that's something that's important for me that also kind of helps impact the environment. So no one's gonna hate on that and be like, well, I'm not going to you guys because you're eco-friendly. Right. And so then again, the cause marketing piece as well, again, lined in with, we use a lot of paper products. We use paper cups, we have a lot of napkins we use. Our packaging of our soft serve when it comes in from the manufacturer comes in, cartons and boxes. And so even hey, we're using up a lot of plants or a lot of trees, right, for paper. Let's help plant that, but not just, hey, we're just planting trees for the sake of planting trees, but we're now helping women in these third world countries create their own business and become entrepreneurs. So to me, like that level of, and again, most of our customers probably don't even know that, but to me, somebody who takes the time to look into what it does and what Trees for the Future does is going to make that connection, be like, wow, that is really cool.
And right? How do you maintain that brand? Because going from 1 unit to 10 units to 30 units, and as you guys continue to grow, because you guys have 30 plus units operating, how do you maintain that identity? And how do you not end up with a diluted brand?
Sure. So something that comes up a lot of times when I talk to either other entrepreneurs or people in the food space is I went the franchise route for one reason, and that reason was funding, right? I had seed investors, AKA family, that gave me enough money to open up one location. Yeah. And so it was really through the risk of that one location, that was the extent of my runway. If that one location didn't work, it was pack your bags, you're moving back to California. And that was not an option for me. Yeah. And so in doing that and in working that store every single day, I really figured out what the optimal operations were. Right. I also understood what the customer liked, didn't like, and was nimble enough at a one-store operation to be able to figure out, hey, this model is one that really works, that could be replicated easily. So the important thing in franchising as well is you want to see consistency across the board. Yeah. McDonald's is a great franchise business because you get that Big Mac or the fries here or in India or in Tokyo, and they taste the same, and the level of service is fast, and so you have a certain level of expectation that no matter where I go, I can get that. And to me, when I looked at the 16 Handles model, it's a low labor model. It's a self-serve environment. So it's really about that guest experience coming for discovery, right? It's like, cool, I wonder what flavors and toppings they have, and I get to do it my way. So really from a guest satisfaction standpoint, in doing polls, we have the highest level of guest satisfactions over our peers that are full service or counter serve. Because if you make something, even if you didn't enjoy it to the optimum, level of like, oh, this could have been better. Because you made it, there's a sense of, ownership and pride. And you're not going to be like, hey, I want a refund because I made it wrong.
Yeah.
The customer is never wrong, right?
Yeah.
And so, and there's also that kind of gamification.
You can also add, I like Reese Pieces. I call it pieces. I don't know if you call it pieces. It's a big debate, East Coast, West Coast on that language of that. But you can't be like, oh, they only gave me 8 when I wanted 9, so I can actually load up or load down as much as I want, which is really cool.
Yeah. So again, I think when it comes to the replicable operating model, we have one of the most consistently replicated model because it's very much dependent upon the equipment and then the products, which are in a self-serve environment.
And how do you determine site location?
So site location, I'm very involved with that. I have to sign off on every single location. We work with a network of brokers in the specific markets that we look to grow in. And we actually have them give us, demographic data, traffic counts, income levels. And one of the things is we don't want a store to intersect with another one within a 3-mile radius and 50,000 people, meaning like I want to see at least 50,000 residents and 3 miles between stores. So that's a formula that's worked successfully for us. Again, outside of Manhattan, because in Manhattan you can go 3 streets and you're in a whole nother neighborhood. But in our suburban locations, that's something that we found. The other thing is we like being in strip centers, end caps, or even inside of malls. So malls and stadiums and things of that nature, you have the captive audience. That's a no-brainer. Those have always been successful for us. The suburban kind of strip centers are the tricky ones. And so for there, what we like to see are neighboring tenants that are also in the quick serve, fast casual space, and specifically ones that maybe don't offer a dessert offering, right? And so we find a lot of the same customers then will go there for a burrito, a pizza, and then afterwards be able to get the soft serve. And so that's been helpful. In terms of size, right? So that's another thing as well is our stores range from 800 to 2,500 square feet. It's a big range, but we actually have found over the years that the smaller locations are more optimal, especially in the last 3 years as delivery is becoming a bigger component. And that's probably a good segue into when I started this in 2008, I didn't think that we'd be delivering soft serve. I think most of our customers that have never ordered delivery from us don't even know that we're capable of doing it, right? It's not like I opened up a pizza concept and it's like, hey, by the way, we deliver. Of course, we have decades of
So how do you guys think about
franchises.
Packaging with regards to delivery of a product?
So we figured out operationally how to do that, and so the product will hold. We've been doing delivery for 4 years. So in terms of mastering the operational wherewithal and the packaging and the handling of the product, we've been doing that. So that really hasn't been the tricky part. The bigger opportunity for us is consistency of getting the order correct and then out to the guest, And so when we started and even now, our stores are on a lot of the same third-party delivery providers. Honestly, the customers don't really care as long as they get food from A to B to wherever they are. And so really it was the customers that dictated that they wanted us there. And when we tested it by way of the third-party platforms and started seeing the traction and the growth, we realized, wow, like, okay, operationally, we now need to be able to figure this out, which we did very easily. But I think when it comes to the different tech stacks and the integration with point of sale, that now became really the operational challenge is, I would say there's a few operational challenges. So for one, it's being able to fulfill the order in a timely manner when, some of our stores will have 5 or 6 different tablets from the different, parties. Getting our business model has worked in such a fluid manner because it's low labor model. And our employees, our team members are behind the line and the customers are serving themselves. And when a delivery order comes in, we now become a full service operation where that employee has to come around from the back, make the order, bag it up, throw it into our freezer, and then wait for the delivery driver. And so it adds a couple steps in terms of the steps of service. But again, not as complex as firing off an order into the back kitchen, and then figuring out like, well, which one do I cook off first in terms of burgers? Like, again, our operating model is very simple, right? I wouldn't say it's easy, but it's not complex. And so in that regards, I think we have an advantage. The other piece of that in terms of the challenge is then who owns that data and who owns that customer. And that's where I have a very strong opinion on kind of the restaurants of today as well as the restaurants of the future, including 16 handles. And we started working with a partner called Lunchbox to build out our native web ordering. because then and only then are we able to gather that customer data and then be able to retarget them and find out what does he or she like.
Right.
So one of the unfair disadvantages that our company has, and I think that's a word that's not common, or a combo of words that's not commonly used, but in our case, we're not an item-based, menu-managed food service operation. So when someone comes in, they don't say, hey, I want vanilla and I want sprinkles and I want Reese's Pieces. It's I get it, and here's how much I'm paying. So really the data points that we have, even within our loyalty program, are I know who this person is and I can get to him or her by way of email or the app. I know how often they come in and I know how much they're paying. Outside of that, I don't have any other levers to be able to pull. Why is that important? Well, in the case of 2019, the product initiative was we only launched vegan soft serve flavors. Did this because of the whole uptick of plant-based alternatives, as well as just a growing flexitarian approach to consuming less dairy, meat, and even the growth of vegan diet. And so what I told my franchisees and my staff were, it's not because everyone's becoming vegan. That's not the why. The why is 16 Handles. The success of our business has always been we have the most choices and we're the most inclusive. We always had a non-dairy sorbet, right? But even with that, we were limited because that was really from an approach of lactose intolerance, not so much, hey, like here's a growing community of people that actually want to minimize or eliminate dairy completely. And so if you think about it, with sorbet flavors, typically they're fruit, right? But those customers that for whatever reason wanted the other non-dairy alternatives were like, make me a vanilla, make me a chocolate flavor, make me the hazelnut spread. And so the approach was, let's do that. And let's then also be known as, again, a company that is innovating and kind of reinventing themselves with different options for different lifestyles.